Hello everyone, I'm Lazy Grouse and today we're going through all the units and mechanics of the Empire in SFO Grimhammer 2. So the Empire's biggest change in SFO Grimhammer is the sheer amount of units they got, and there are a lot of really cool units among them. First, we got a new lord type, the Grandmaster, and he comes with the choice of a bunch of different mounts. You get to choose a mount from any of the knightly orders of the Empire, and they come with different stats and abilities, so you can pick and choose what kind of buffs you want him to come with. There's Honor of the Panther for bonus versus large and magic resistance from the Knight's Panther, Sigil of the Black Guard for damage and fear from Knights of More, for the White Wolf for lowering armor and speed of the enemy from Knights of the White Wolf, Orders of the Empire for speed, melee attack and charge bonus from the normal Barded Horse, for the Emperor for armor and missile resistance from the Reiksguard, and Sol Invictus for the fire weakness and lowering charge bonus from the Knights of Blazing Sun. But regardless of what mount you choose, he also have Bolster Leadership for some leadership and immune to psychology, Flow of Battle for some speed and vigor, and Indomitable for some defense and physical resistance. He also got Imperial Tactics, which buffs units with leadership, defense, reload skill, accuracy, AP damage, and charge bonus. And last, he and every other Empire unit got the SFO ability Imperial Allegiance, which gives units leadership and defense while not winning in battle. Overall, he's a really cool lord since you can customize him to be what you want him to be, and he's good in a fight, so he's pretty cool. Next we have the Wolfkin, and they're basically flagellants if they worshipped Ulric instead of Sigmar. They're very similar mechanically, with the Wolfkin just having slightly lower melee attack, damage and charge bonus, but 3000 more HP, so it takes a bit more effort to kill them. They also have bleed, so even though they have lower damage and attack, they can still keep up in damage output. The Sigmar Disciples are a pretty well-rounded infantry unit, and you can't really go wrong with them. They have decent stats with silver shields, magic attacks, good armor piercing, so they will do well against most things. They also buff allies around them with Shield of Sigmar, which gives them physical resistance and immune to psychology, so even if you have more elite units available, they are still good as a one-off to buff your other units. They also added cavalry units from the two remaining major Empire Knights orders, the Knight's Panther and the Knights of the White Wolf, and they're both similar to the Knights of the Blazing Sun and Reiksguard, but being geared to fill slightly different roles. The Knight's Panther is a shock cavalry, and they're fairly balanced stat-wise with good defensive and offensive stats, and they're best used against large units like monsters or other cav with 15 bonus versus large. They also have the Panther Standard, which gives them and allies within range magic resistance and the banished contact effect, which lowers resistance and increases miscast chance. So they're good at hunting casters as well, preferably mounted casters with their bonus versus large. They also have the Diamond Formation to buff their defenses a bit and give them some charge bonus at the cost of speed. The Knights of the White Wolf is a hammer cavalry, which is fitting since they make a great hammer in Hammer and Anvil because they're geared towards damage. They got the highest damage amongst the knightly order with great AP, and they have Frenzy on top of it, which gives them even more damage and attack. Their charge bonus is the lowest though, but it can be boosted with a Diamond Formation, but since their charge bonus is fairly low to begin with, they're fine to just leave in sustained combat because they don't get too much benefit out of cycle charging. They also got a bunch of new regional units that replaces some of the old ones. The Imperial Foot is an elite infantry variant of the Reiksguard, and they replace the Karabberg Greatsword, which haven't been removed though, they've been turned into a legendary unit available from Karabberg. But the Imperial Foot is the sturdiest infantry in the Empire roster with great melee defense, high armor and silver shields, so they can hold the line against most things. They also have a good attack stat and decent damage, but fairly low AP, so against other heavy armor they're better at holding the line than dealing damage. And they also have Imperial Vigilance, which buffs allies with leadership and vigor. The Teutogen Guards are a great hammer infantry that replaces the Swords of Ulric, and they did not get the same treatment as the Karabberg Greatswords since they are now only available in garrisons and an army ability. The Teutogen Guards are a greatswords unit with great hammers instead, and they're much more offensively minded than greatswords with higher attack and damage but lower defense. They also have a higher AP, but they lose the bonus versus infantry, so they're great against heavily armored units, but against infantry you're probably better off using normal greatswords. But they also have Wolf's Howl, which buffs allies with more damage and strong vigor, so they're a good support unit too. The Hochland Long Rifles are a handgunner unit that replaces the Gundam's Surefire, and they have similar stats to the normal long rifles, but slightly lower damage but longer range. And with the Stagger Shot ability, they slow down their targets and lower their missile resistance and defense. And as long as they're at long range, they compensate for the lower damage with steady aim, which gives them reload skill, accuracy, more damage and even longer range, but if an enemy gets within 70 meters, they lose the bonus. So overall, they're a great unit to have since they do good damage at long range and supports other ranged units by slowing down enemies and lowers missile resistance. The Nuln Ironsides are a handgunner unit that replaces the Emperor's Wrath, so unfortunately the Emperor's Wrath is gone, but there is a new steam tank that we will talk about real soon. But the Iron Sights are a really good handgunner unit with good combat stats if they get into melee, but their shooting is of course what they're best at. They got slightly less damage per volley than normal handgunners, but they shoot about 5 times as fast with only 3 seconds of reload time. Fortunately, they got about double the ammo of normal handgunners, but they will still run out pretty fast considering how fast they shoot. But that's where the combat stats come in. They have about the same stats as swordsmen, but with more armor and damage, so if they run out of ammo, they're still a great unit to have around and just send into the fray. The Altdorf Company of Honor is a legendary halberd unit, and they're a really strong halberd unit. They got more health, armor, leadership, defense and damage, and that large health pool is gonna help them survive while still getting their abilities off, because their abilities only work when they're under a certain amount of health. Leader boosts melee defense to them and allies nearby when their health is lower than 50%, and courage gives them and allies nearby damage resistance and leadership when their health is lower than 25%. So you'll want them on the front line taking damage so you can get these abilities, but the abilities can be kind of hard to trigger since they're really good at just surviving and holding the line with that large health pool and really good defensive stats. Deliverance is a legendary steam tank, and it kinda replaces the Emperor's Wrath since it's got the kaboom ability for when it dies and emergency vent like the Emperor's Wrath, but you can also change what kind of ammo it shoots. It's got 2 kinds of ammo: solid shot that's just straight up damage with most of it being AP, and a 200 bonus versus large, so it's great against big monsters. But it also got explosive shot, which got slightly lower damage but with explosion damage, so it's good against infantry units. And on top of that, it's still a steam tank, so it's great in melee combat against low AP units. The final recruitable unit is the Army of Sigmar, which is a flagellant unit only available to Volkmar, and it's a flagellant unit with 8000 extra HP, 80 extra models and a bonus versus infantry, so it does what flagellants do, but better. So late game Volkmar with all his flagellant bonuses can use this instead to keep them relevant. There's also 2 new units only available as summons from the Empire Captains and the Witch Hunters, and they are the Officer Squad and the Witch Hunter Retinue. The Witch Hunter Retinue is a small unit of hybrid crossbow units with decent melee stats and good ranged attack with magic damage, AP and anti-large. They also got the Prayer of Binding, which lowers resistance, armor and speed of the enemy unit. And the Officer Squad is a small hybrid unit with good melee stats and handguns with very good damage. They also got bolstered leadership that buffs leadership and immune to psychology to allies nearby. And that's all the units, so let's take a look at some new stuff in the Empire campaign. So the Empire got a bunch of fun stuff for you to play with in their campaign, and first of all, there's a bunch of new events that lets you govern the Empire, like changing your tax rate for money at the cost of growth and public order, or decreasing it for the opposite effect. You also get an event every 30 turns where you get to decide what your tax money is used for, which gives you a buff that lasts for 30 turns. You always get a different selection of buffs, but they all have different effects that buff your faction in some powerful ways. Or if you don't like any of them, you can just take some prestige and pass on all of them. They also have a bunch of random events, for example if you want to tell your people the truth about the existence of Skaven or keep covering it up. Imperial Authority have also gotten some extra effects. While you got the positive authority, you get the bonus prestige, leadership, growth and cheaper recruitment, but if you go to 0 or negative, you get diplomatic relations penalties, lower research rate, lower growth, less income from trade, negative public order, but you get more melee defense against Empire factions and more post-battle loot, and of course at -10 there's a civil war as usual. The electoral machinations have also been expanded to give you more options like establishing trade or alliances. But probably the biggest addition in Grimhammer is the Imperial Decrees, which is a panel where you spend your excess prestige for buffs that last for 10 turns. Most of them cost 1000 prestige, but get more expensive the more settlements and lords you got, and each of the legendary lords of the Empire get their own unique buffs, and we'll go through them once we go through each of the legendary lords. The tech tree have also been expanded for all the Empire factions, and the military and infrastructure tech branches have all been expanded with some new tech in each category, allowing you to further buff your units or improve your economy. But the big changes are the new juicy techs, which allows you to pick a deity to worship. You get to choose a minor deity from both columns after building a common temple, which gives you some nice buffs, but it costs a base of 20,000 gold. But if you got a good economy, it's worth it since the buffs are pretty substantial. You also get to choose a major deity, either Sigmar or Ulric, but you have to build either a Cathedral of Sigmar or a Grand Altar to Ulric, so you have to wait until you can build tier 5 buildings for these techs. But once you get there, you can get some really strong buffs and army abilities regardless of which one you choose. They also got some new buildings like the Ulric Worship Chain, which gives public order, hero action cost reduction, hero action success chance, untainted, melee attack for armies in the province, lower income from buildings in the province, and the ability to summon Swords of Ulric while fighting in the province. It also unlocks the recruitment of the new Wolfkin and of course unlocks the Ulric tech. They also got the Common Temple, which gives public order, untainted, more income, and it unlocks the minor deity tech. And they got the Training Grounds chain, which gives unit experience per turn, lower recruitment cost, and recruit rank. They also got some new and changed stances. The Empire Encamp stance is like regular Encamp but only requires 25% movement to adopt. And Entrench gives your army missile resistance, ammo, missile strength, lower enemy hero success chance but lower your campaign movement by 25%. And that's all the general stuff, but the lords have some unique stuff as well. Starting with Karl Franz, his imperial decrees are divided into economy, military and diplomacy. Economy got growth, taxes, public order and cheaper and faster buildings. In military you got the ability to buy imperial authority, which is really handy when you're ruling an empire, with some lord recruit rank bonus added to it. There's also buffs to your campaign movement range and line of sight, bonus to your recruiting troops and defensive stats for battle. And in diplomacy you got opinion with Bretonia, High Elves, Empires and Dwarves with some extra bonuses added on, and these can be really handy if you're trying to establish trade or alliances, but some of the bonuses are definitely worth it by themselves. Volkmar the Grim's imperial decrees are divided into Cult of Sigmar, the Faith Militant and Purging. Cult of Sigmar got effects that deal with corruption, like recruitment of heroes to help remove corruption, spread untainted, less public order loss from corruption, with some extra bonuses like upkeep reduction growth and the ability to buy imperial authority, which is pretty handy when you're leading the Church of Sigmar. Faith of the Militant got a bunch of bonuses to your religious units like combat stats and upkeep reduction for Sigmarite Disciples and Flagellants, and stats and campaign buffs for Volkmar, Arch-Electors and Warrior Priests. And then there's Purging, which gives you combat buffs to fight specific races for all your purging needs. Balthasar Gelt's imperial decree is divided into Alchemy, Winds of Magic and Engineering. Alchemy buffs your units either by stats or lowering their cost. Winds of Magic mainly buffs your casters with some strong bonuses, but they all come with a cost in addition to the prestige cost. And Engineering got buffs to your artillery and the ability to buy imperial authority, which is pretty handy when you're the supreme patriarch of the colleges of magic. Marcus is a bit different from the other lords since he doesn't play in the Empire, so he doesn't get the Imperial events. He did get some tweaks to his existing mechanics. You now get extra goodies from Acclaim like campaign movement range, income from trade, and lower upkeep for Imperial supply units, and they all scale with higher Acclaim. But the biggest change to Acclaim is that it slowly unlocks Marcus's Imperial decrees because it starts empty and needs to be unlocked throughout the campaign. Hostility has also gotten some additions and isn't only negative modifiers that makes your enemy stronger, it still is that, but you also get some bonus experience to your units for surviving and extra income from battles, so hostility isn't only there to make your lives harder anymore. But that's all the units and mechanics of the Empire in SFO Grimhammer 2. And if you want to see these changes in action, I got a Karl Franz campaign right here. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. And if you did, consider leaving a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!